My name is Sarah Morinson, 33 years old, and I never thought the people who raised me would laugh while my daughter was being slapped. But they did. And in that moment, I realized something deeper than betrayal. I was the only one who had ever chosen to break the cycle. This story isn't just about what happened that day. It's about what led up to it, and what I had to lose to finally find peace. So, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe, because some stories aren't just heard, they're felt. Let's go back. I still hear the sound. That sharp, echoing crack, like a thunderclap in a church. My daughter's soft wail filled the room seconds later. And all around me, laughter. Not the nervous kind. Not the I don't know what to do kind. It was cruel, cold, familiar. It came from my family. I remember just standing there, paralyzed, like I'd stepped outside my own body. My 5-year-old, Ellie, was clutching her cheek, red and trembling, tears spilling faster than her little lungs could keep up. And my brother, Daniel, he just stood tall over her, like nothing happened, like he had the right. He looked at me like I should be the one apologizing. My mother chuckled and said something like, "Well, that's what happens when you don't raise them right." And my dad? He sipped his drink like he was watching a rerun. I wanted to scream. But my voice didn't show up. It just left me. There's something about betrayal that hits different when it's delivered with a smile. When it's served by the people who held you as a baby. When it's your own blood turning their backs, not quietly, but with applause. I didn't slap Daniel back. I didn't shout. I didn't do anything. And that's the part I still wrestle with when I can't sleep at night. But if you want to understand how I got there, if you want to understand why they laughed, why I froze, and why I didn't walk away sooner, you need to know the truth. You need to know how long I've been the family scapegoat. You need to know what it cost me to finally say, enough. Because that slap, that wasn't the beginning. It was the final spark in a house soaked in gasoline. Let me take you back. I was the youngest of 3. Daniel, 6 years older, Rachel, 4 years older, and then there was me, Sarah, the oops baby, with the loud laugh and crooked pigtails. From as far back as I can remember, I was the one doing too much. Too loud, too sensitive, too needy, too dramatic, too emotional. It didn't matter what I did. I always felt like the stain on the family photo. Daniel was the golden boy, quarterback, scholarship, mom's pride and joy. Rachel was the quiet genius, debate team, honor roll, went vegan before it was cool. And me, I was the one who made everything about her. That was their favorite line. There goes Sarah again, making it about her. What they never saw was how hard I tried to be good, to be invisible, to not take up space. I stopped asking for birthday parties after age 8. Stopped crying when Daniel teased me until my face turned red. I learned to laugh when it hurt, and I became so good at pretending. But when Ellie was born, something cracked open inside me. Something soft, something fierce. I held her tiny body in my arms and made a silent promise. She will never feel the way I did growing up. I moved out at 19. Vegas was loud and chaotic, just like me. I waitressed, I sang at weddings, I taught kids piano, I worked whatever job would keep Ellie's milk warm and the lights on. It wasn't easy, but it was ours. And for years, I kept them at arm's length. Quick phone calls, polite holidays, pictures sent through gritted smiles. It was like dancing on glass, always careful, always controlled. Then came that weekend. Rachel was renewing her vows. 5 years married to a dentist with more teeth than charm. Big backyard party, catered buffet, pastel dresses, the works. She called me personally. "Sarah, it would mean a lot if you came. Really." I hesitated. Daniel would be there. Mom and Dad would be there. Ellie had never met them in person, but some part of me, that wounded, wishful part, thought, maybe this time, maybe they've changed. I bought Ellie the cutest yellow dress with daisies, did her hair in 2 little buns. She looked like a sunbeam. I told her we were going to meet her family, and her eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. We drove 6 hours. I practiced deep breaths the whole way. You're not that little girl anymore, Sarah. You're a mother now. You're strong. When we arrived, everything looked perfect on the outside. The rented tent, the soft music, the pastel tablecloths fluttering in the desert breeze, hugs that felt stiff, kisses that missed the cheek. Daniel gave me a once-over, smirked, and said, "Didn't know you were still doing the single mom thing." I laughed like it didn't gut me. I always laugh. Ellie clung to my hand like ivy. The ceremony was sweet. Rachel looked happy. And for a moment, I let myself believe I could belong. Then Ellie cried. She tripped near the buffet. Little legs just didn't keep up. She didn't even fall hard, just scared herself. She cried like 5-year-olds do, loud and honest. Before I could reach her, Daniel was already there. He bent down, and without warning, his hand snapped across her cheek. I swear, time stopped. Ellie froze, then shrieked. Everyone turned, and then the laughter started. Low, then louder. Rachel giggled behind her wine glass. My mom looked at me and said, "Well, someone had to do it." I picked up my daughter, held her tight, checked her cheek. No blood, but it was red. She clung to my neck, trembling, and all I could hear was their laughter. Then Daniel walked past me, muttering just loud enough, "Maybe if you disciplined her, someone else wouldn't have to." I didn't move. Couldn't move. Not when my own father chuckled and said, "You always were too soft, Sarah." Not when my mom started pouring another drink like it was nothing. Not even when Rachel called out, "Don't ruin the party, please." I held Ellie close, her breath hitching against my collarbone. And I thought, is this who they are? Or is this who they've always been? Then something in me snapped, not loud like a scream. Quiet, cold, clear. And that's when I walked back into the tent and said something that made everyone go silent. Before that slap echoed through my chest like a war drum, before I saw my family for who they really were, my world was small, but warm, messy, but mine. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Morning started early in our little 2-bedroom off Sahara Avenue. You could hear the buses hiss through the cracked bathroom window. The tiles were chipped, and the water pressure played roulette. But it was our fortress, me and Ellie. She'd tiptoe into my room around 6:45 like clockwork, dragging her stuffed fox by the tail. Every morning, without fail, she'd whisper, "Mama, are we doing the yellow cereal or the smiley pancakes?" And every morning, I'd answer, "Whatever the queen of breakfast commands." We'd eat cross-legged on the couch, cartoons humming in the background, her hair a wild halo around her face, and I'd look at her and feel something I never knew growing up. Peace. Like maybe I was doing something right after all. I worked evenings, waitressing at the Bellagio's Italian place, mostly tourists, mostly polite, sometimes drunk. The tips were decent, the uniform itchy. But I held on to that job like it was gold, because it was. It paid for Ellie's shoes, her piano classes, her birthday cake last year that looked like a castle. During the day, I freelanced. Voiceovers, audio editing, podcast help, anything I could do from home. The goal was always the same. Be there when Ellie got home from school. Be the face she saw at pickup. The hand that wiped her tears. The one who always came back. I didn't go out much. Didn't have a long list of friends. But I had Ellie. And I had peace. That's not to say I didn't carry scars. Some mornings, I'd hear my mom's voice in my head. "You think you're special just because you cry louder?" Or Daniel's laugh when I flinched. It would creep in when I least expected it, but I'd shake it off, turn the music up, and dance around the living room with Ellie until the ghosts shut up. I thought distance was enough, that if I built my own world far from theirs, they couldn't hurt me anymore. That was my mistake. Because pain doesn't always need permission. Sometimes it shows up wearing a familiar face. Sometimes it's family that teaches you how to shrink. Rachel was the only one I kept in semi-regular contact with. Not because we were close, we weren't, but because she played the peacemaker, the voice of reason, the one who always said, "You know how they are, Sarah. Just don't take it personally." She'd send me pictures of her backyard renovations, talk about kombucha and goat yoga. And every once in a while, she'd say something that sounded like concern. "How's Ellie doing? Are you okay? You should let Mom see her sometime." I never knew how to answer that, because what I wanted to say was, Mom can't even love herself, let alone anyone else. But instead, I'd smile through the phone and say, "We're doing just fine." Daniel, on the other hand, he was a shadow I couldn't shake. Even from miles away, he lingered. Growing up, he was the kind of sibling who turned cruelty into sport. He'd tease until I cried, then mock me for crying. Once, he locked me in the garage for 2 hours when I was 6, said it was a game, then told Mom I was being dramatic. She believed him. She always did. But in public? He was charming. He knew how to smile wide and shake hands. People liked him. They always said, "Daniel's just got that presence." What they didn't see was how that presence could suck the air out of a room. How his compliments always came with a hidden hook. How he'd corner you with kindness, then leave you bleeding from words no one else heard. The last time I saw him before the vow renewal, Ellie was 2. He showed up at a family BBQ in Phoenix, lifted her in the air like he was some kind of doting uncle. But I saw it. The way she squirmed. She didn't like it. I asked him to put her down. He laughed and said, "You're raising her soft. She's gonna get eaten alive." I should have left then. But back then, I still believed in the illusion. Still thought that if I smiled wide enough, they'd see me. That if I became a good enough mother, they'd finally respect me. That maybe, just maybe, I could rewrite my own family story. I had this image in my head of Ellie running around a garden, playing with cousins, her dress twirling, her face lit up, and me, sipping lemonade, talking to my sister like real sisters do. I imagined Daniel being decent, civil, maybe softened by time. I thought if I gave them the benefit of the doubt, just once more, they'd surprise me. They'd change. I didn't realize back then that sometimes the people you want to prove wrong will spend their whole lives trying to prove you never mattered. The week leading up to Rachel's vow renewal, I started feeling it. That tightness in my chest, like I was bracing for a punch I couldn't see. But I ignored it. Told myself I was overreacting. Told myself it was my anxiety, not their reality. I even called my mom. Haven't heard her voice in over a year. The first thing she said wasn't "Hi" or "How are you?" It was, "So you're finally bringing that child around, huh?" That child. Not Ellie. Not my granddaughter. Just that child. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "Yeah, I figured it was time." She sighed, said something about making extra potato salad, then hung up like we were discussing a weather report. Still, I held on to hope. That desperate, childlike hope that maybe this time, maybe I'd walk into that house and it'd feel like home. Ellie was so excited. She made a little drawing for Rachel, a pink heart with stick figures labeled Auntie and Me. She practiced saying congratulations in the mirror like it was a school play. She asked me, "Mama, do you think they'll like me?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. "They'll love you, baby. You're impossible not to love." I believed that. And more than anything, I wanted them to see her. To really see her. not as a burden or a mistake or a symbol of my failure, but as this radiant, joyful little being who made the world brighter just by existing. But now I realize, you can't make blind people see, not when they choose darkness. There was one moment, just before the trip, that still haunts me. I was tucking Ellie in. She looked up at me, eyes wide and hopeful, and asked, "Mama, will they clap for me if I sing at the party?" I told her, "They'd be lucky to hear you." What I didn't tell her was the truth, that these people, these family members, clapped for cruelty, laughed at pain, and saw compassion as weakness. But I didn't want to take that innocence from her. Not yet. So we packed. Yellow dress, matching sandals, one stuffed fox and a suitcase full of hope. And as we pulled out of our driveway, Ellie waved goodbye to the neighbor's cat. And I whispered to myself, maybe this time will be different. Maybe they'll see us. Maybe I've finally built enough strength to be seen. I didn't know it yet, but I was walking straight into the fire. There's a silence that comes right after betrayal, not the peaceful kind. The kind that screams without making a sound. The kind that wraps around your throat while you smile for the crowd. That's what I felt as I stood there, Ellie in my arms, her cheek red, my heartbeat louder than the music playing in the tent. No one rushed over. No one gasped or stood up or said, "What the hell just happened?" Because to them, this wasn't betrayal. This was entertainment. I looked into my mother's eyes. She didn't flinch. She sipped her drink, red wine staining her teeth, and shrugged like Daniel had just shooed a fly. My father leaned back in his plastic chair and muttered, "She'll toughen up." And Rachel, my sister, the one who begged me to come, who told me this mattered, she laughed, hand over her mouth like it was some inside joke, then said, "Well, you always said she was a little dramatic." That's when something split inside me, not snapped. Split, like a slow tear down the center of my chest. And from that tear poured years of swallowed anger, unspoken truths, loneliness wrapped in politeness. I kissed Ellie's forehead, set her down gently in one of the lounge chairs, and I walked straight back into the tent, straight into the middle of their pastel fantasy. They went quiet when they saw me coming. I guess my face said it all. The smile I'd worn all day, the one I learned from Mom, was gone. I stood in front of the table where Daniel sat, legs spread wide, confidence dripping like motor oil, and I said one sentence, "Don't you ever touch my daughter again." It came out low, controlled, terrifying even to me. He raised an eyebrow. Someone had to teach her not to scream like a maniac. I turned to Rachel. "You're really okay with this?" She blinked. "Sarah, it was just a tap." "She's 5, I said. She cried. That's what kids do. "And you all laughed," Mom scoffed behind me. "Don't come here acting like you're better than us. You were a disaster growing up." That one hit, harder than Daniel's slap. I turned to her, voice shaking now. "And whose fault was that? Who looked away every time he hurt me? Who said I was too emotional while he locked me in closets and told me I didn't matter?" Dead silence. Dad said flatly, "We don't air dirty laundry at events." That's when the spiral started. Because I saw it in their eyes, that I'd crossed some invisible line. I broke the rule. The one that said, "Smile, Sarah, laugh it off. Be grateful we let you come at all." But I didn't want to go back to who I used to be. So I said it. "You don't get to be near my daughter again. Any of you. Ever." Then I grabbed Ellie, still sniffling quietly, and we walked out. No one followed, not even Rachel. I made it to the car before I started shaking. I buckled Ellie in with trembling fingers. She looked at me and whispered, "Did I do something bad, Mama?" And that's when I broke. Tears came fast and ugly, the kind you choke on. I leaned against the steering wheel and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. My body curled inward, like it was trying to hold my heart in place. No, baby, I gasped. You didn't do anything wrong. They did. I drove away from that house with blurry eyes and clenched teeth, back onto the highway, back into the dark, back to our little apartment where the floor creaks and the cereal goes stale too fast, but where no one laughs when my daughter cries. The days after, they bled together. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her wide, shocked eyes, the way she looked at me after he hit her, like she was asking, "Is this what love looks like?" I spiraled, not dramatically, quietly, dangerously. I stopped answering texts, stopped working. I let dishes pile up in the sink, let laundry mold in the machine. I moved through the world like a ghost in my own skin. Ellie noticed. She always does. She started waking up from nightmares, crawling into my bed in the middle of the night, whimpering in her sleep. I'd hold her tight and pretend I wasn't crying into her hair. One afternoon, I found her trying to put blush on her cheek, the same one Daniel slapped. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "If I make it look pretty, maybe people will be happy." That's when the shame set in. Not shame that they hurt her, shame that I let them, that I walked her into the lion's den and called it a garden. I started questioning everything. Who was I to protect her when I couldn't even protect myself? Had I become my mother without realizing it? Silent, complicit, cold? What did I expect would happen when I brought her there? The rage came next. Burning, blinding rage. Not just at Daniel, at all of them. At the people who raised me to believe my voice was too loud, my pain too dramatic, my worth conditional. But the worst of it? I was angry at myself. For hoping. For believing. For wanting their love so badly I gambled my daughter's safety to earn it. A week later, Rachel texted. Just 2 words. "You good?" I stared at my phone like it had grown teeth. I didn't answer. Then came Mom's email. Subject line, "Overreaction." It was a 5-paragraph essay on how I always make things bigger than they are, how Daniel meant well, how this family doesn't do drama. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call her and ask if she remembers what she said to me at 12E. When I told her Daniel touched me too rough. And she said, "Don't accuse your brother of things like that." But I didn't. Instead, I deleted the email, blocked her number, blocked Rachel too. I wanted clean air. I wanted space to feel what I was feeling without their gaslighting fingers in my mind. That collapse didn't feel like falling. It felt like dissolving. Like who I thought I was, the mother, the protector, the healed version of me, had vanished into thin air. But then something strange happened. In the middle of the mess, Ellie started drawing again. She brought me a picture one morning, me with a superhero cape, holding her hand. She said, "This is when you made the scary stop." And just like that, a flicker of light, not enough to stand up, but enough to breathe. I realized, maybe I didn't freeze. Maybe I didn't fail. Maybe walking out was the most powerful thing I've ever done. But healing doesn't arrive in one sweeping moment. It comes in pieces. In ugly cries and quiet breakfasts and bedtime stories where I'm not distracted. I started journaling again. I reached out to one friend, just one, and told her the whole story. She cried with me. She said, "Sarah, that wasn't your fault." And for the first time, I almost believed it. The pain still came in waves. Guilt, anger, grief. But so did something else. Clarity. Because once you stop hoping they'll change, you can start changing yourself. And I knew then. I had to rebuild from the ground up. No more chasing crumbs of love. No more gaslighting myself into silence. I had a daughter watching, learning. And this time, I'd show her what strength really looks like. People think hitting rock bottom is dramatic. A breakdown in the rain, a bottle in one hand, mascara running, shouting at the sky. But my rock bottom looked quieter, more ordinary. It looked like not brushing my teeth for 2 days, like microwaving the same frozen meal 3 nights in a row, like setting alarms and snoozing them until noon. The world kept spinning, but I didn't. I wasn't okay, and I didn't know how to pretend anymore. After what happened at the vow renewal, I stopped taking calls, stopped answering texts. I told Ellie I was just tired, but she knew. Kids always know. I'd catch her watching me with those big, curious eyes, like she was trying to figure out if her mama was still in there. And truth is, I wasn't sure myself. I started drinking again. Not heavily. Not like some dramatic movie spiral, but enough. 1 glass of wine turned into 2, then into a bottle while folding laundry, then into a secret, and secrets grow mold fast. I stopped freelancing, let emails go unanswered, clients disappeared. So did the money. I pawned my old microphone, sold a pair of boots I loved, cut off my Spotify premium like that would somehow fix things. The worst part, I started resenting Ellie. I hated myself for even thinking that. But every time she asked for something, a story, a snack, a hug, I felt this tight, bitter knot inside. Not at her. At me. At what I'd become. At how much she needed me when I had nothing left to give. One morning, she found me crying on the bathroom floor. I don't remember what triggered it. Maybe it was the overdue rent notice. Maybe it was just the silence. She knelt beside me and wrapped her arms around my neck, whispered, "It's okay, Mama. You can cry too." I held her so tight. I think I scared her. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one carrying the weight. So I called a therapist. Her name was June, mid-50s, calm voice, the kind of woman who made tea in actual kettles. She didn't flinch when I told her what happened, didn't rush to fix me. She just listened, and when I said, maybe I deserved it, bringing Ellie there, she said, "That's not shame speaking, that's old programming." She helped me see something I couldn't before, that my family didn't just fail me. They trained me to doubt myself, to normalize harm, to believe I was always too much or not enough. And I'd been dragging that training through every part of my life. It wasn't healing, not yet. But it was the first time someone held up a mirror and said, "Look, you're not crazy, you're injured. But healing isn't a staircase, it's a loop." Some days I'd feel light again, like maybe I was turning a corner. I'd take Ellie to the park, feel the sun on my face, laugh without guilt, and then something small would knock me over. An old photo, a Facebook memory, a voicemail I forgot to delete, and I'd be back in that hole. I started writing again, not for clients, for me. I wrote letters I'd never send. To Daniel, to my mom, to the little girl I used to be. I wrote about the night I almost ran away at 16 but didn't have bus fare. About the time Mom slapped my wrist for spilling juice but blamed me for making her angry. I wrote and wrote until the pages bled. Then came the twist. Rachel reached out again. This time, not with a text. She showed up at my door. Ellie was at school. I opened the door, and there she was, flawless as ever, with a reusable coffee cup and designer sunglasses. I should have slammed the door. But part of me, the oldest part, still hoped. She said, "Can we talk?" I let her in. She sat on my couch like it still belonged to her, said all the things I thought I wanted to hear. "I'm sorry about what happened. I should have spoken up. You're right, it was wrong." And then, the hook. "But maybe it's time to move on. Maybe we can rebuild, Sarah. For Ellie's sake. For Mom." There it was. That word again. Maybe. The tiny knife hiding inside the apology. I looked at her and asked, "What exactly are you sorry for?" She blinked. Said, "For everything." I shook my head. No specifics, No ownership, just a polished little performance. Her smile faded. "This isn't fair," she said. "You're acting like we're the enemy." "You laughed when my daughter got hit," I said. "That's not just a mistake. That's who you are." She stood up, angry now. "Fine, stay bitter. But don't expect us to keep waiting for you to grow up." And just like that, the false hope shattered. She left, and with her, the last thread connecting me to that family. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of water, not wine. It felt different, like something had shifted. Letting go isn't loud. It's not some grand speech or dramatic goodbye. It's quiet. It's sitting in stillness and saying, "I can't carry this anymore." I knew then, if I wanted Ellie to be free, I had to give up the dream that they'd ever love me the way I needed. That was the sacrifice. Not a person, not a job, but the dream. The dream of being chosen, of being enough, of being seen. From there, I rebuilt. Slowly, clumsily. I went back to therapy twice a week. Got Ellie into a new school with better teachers. Softer energy. I started saying no, even to myself. No more guilt-driven calls. No more bending just to keep the peace. I started running. Just around the block at first, then longer. The air tasted different when I moved with purpose. I picked up voiceover work again. Nothing big, but it reminded me that my voice had value. That I wasn't just someone who endured. I was someone who created. And Ellie, she started sleeping through the night again. She hummed when she played. Her drawings were bright again. Kids always know. One day, I found her singing in the bathtub. A silly made-up song about bubble dragons and shampoo crowns. I leaned against the doorframe, listening. Tears welled up, not from sadness, from relief. We were okay. Maybe not whole yet, but healing. And I realized I didn't need their version of family. I had one. Right there. 5 years old. Covered in bubbles. Singing her heart out like no one had ever told her to be small. They say rock bottom teaches you things the mountaintop never will. But what they don't tell you is how slow the climb back up really is. It doesn't start with fireworks. It starts with mornings. Small, quiet, stubborn mornings. The first one that felt different came on a Tuesday. I opened my eyes before the alarm. There was light spilling through the curtains. Golden, soft, patient. Ellie was still asleep, curled into her pillow like a seashell. And I felt still. Not broken, not fixed, just still. I slipped out of bed and made coffee. Real coffee. Not the instant kind. And I sat there on the porch in silence, watching the neighborhood dogs chase shadows across the sidewalk. And I breathed. That's how healing starts. One quiet inhale at a time. I began showing up for myself in small ways. I journaled every night, even when all I could write was, "I'm tired." I put my phone on airplane mode after 8 p.m. I made a playlist of songs that made me feel alive, not just numb. Ellie and I created routines that weren't about survival, but joy. Saturday pancake art, midweek dance battles in pajamas, evening affirmations. Not the cheesy kind, but the kind that matter. You are safe. You are smart. You are loved. And slowly, I started becoming someone new. Not a different person, but the version of me that had been buried under years of conditioning. Professionally, I rebuilt. One email at a time, one gig at a time. A friend of mine, one of the only ones I hadn't pushed away, recommended me to a podcaster who needed editing. That led to another, then another. Soon, I had 5 clients, then 10. I invested in a new mic, bought secondhand lighting, and turned the corner of our living room into a tiny studio. Ellie called it Mama's Magic Booth. But it did feel like magic, because I wasn't just earning. I was creating. With my voice. The same voice my family once called too loud, too much, too dramatic. Now, it paid the bills. Now, it put food on the table. Now, it told stories that people actually wanted to hear. I launched my own podcast 6 months later. Small voice, big heart. Each week, I'd share reflections, read letters from listeners, talk about healing, motherhood, boundaries, and becoming whole again. Nothing fancy, just truth. And it grew. Strangers sent messages like, "I left my toxic family because of your story. You helped me forgive myself." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And then, there was Mason. It started slowly. He was a single dad at Ellie's new school. Kind eyes, worn-out sneakers, the kind of laugh that made you lean in. We'd chat at pickup. Nothing major. Just two tired parents talking about traffic and picky eaters. One afternoon, it started raining during dismissal. He offered me half of his umbrella. We stood under it like a scene out of some old movie. Laughing, drenched, not saying much. And yet everything. Over the next few weeks, we started having coffee together while the kids played in the park. There was no pressure, no game. He told me about his divorce. I told him about my family. He didn't flinch, didn't try to fix me, just saw me. And something in me began to soften. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be met where I was. No expectations, no performance, no tightrope. He listened, really listened, and that alone felt like a miracle. By spring, I'd stopped hiding. I wore bright colors again, painted the bathroom peach, got Ellie a kitten named Muffin, and for the first time in years, I stopped bracing for impact, stopped checking over my shoulder for ghosts. I wasn't naive. I knew grief would still visit. But I also knew I had built a home it could walk through without staying. I looked in the mirror one night and whispered, "You made it. You're still here." And I believed it. But here's the thing about peace. It makes noise stand out even louder. I was in the grocery store one afternoon when I saw my mother. She was in the canned goods aisle, holding a can of chickpeas. Same hair, same perfume, same sharp eyes scanning the ingredients like they were suspect. I froze. My heart slammed so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I hadn't seen her in over a year. She looked up, saw me, and smiled. Like we were old friends. Like nothing had happened. I gave her a polite nod. Nothing more. And I walked away. My hands shook the entire checkout. But I didn't cry. I didn't panic. That's how I knew I'd changed. Because the old me would have rushed to her, begged for love disguised as approval, laughed off the pain just to be let back in. But this version of me, she knew better. 2 weeks later, the email came. Subject line, "Family BBQ, would love to see you." It was from Rachel. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't heard a word from her since she stormed out of my apartment. The message was short. Daniel would be there. So would Mom and Dad. There was no apology, just the invitation. And a line that said, "Let's move forward." Forward. As if forgiveness were a shortcut. As if time was a magic eraser. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I was clear. Clear that peace doesn't mean proximity. Clear that closure doesn't always come with apologies. But something in my chest stirred. I could feel the ground shifting, like a storm gathering behind the clouds. Not yet arrived, but close. And I knew they weren't done. That night, Mason and I sat on the back steps watching Ellie chase fireflies. He looked at me and said, "You seem lighter lately." I smiled. I think I finally stopped waiting for them to say sorry. He reached for my hand, didn't say anything, didn't have to. Because in that moment, with the moon above us, laughter in the yard, and no ghosts at the table, I knew this was what family could feel like. Not obligation, not fear, but choice. And yet, there was still something unfinished. Not bitterness, not revenge, but truth. A truth that deserved to be said, out loud, in front of the ones who tried to silence me for decades. Because healing isn't always quiet. Sometimes, it walks straight back into the room where it all began, not to seek validation, but to reclaim its voice. And something told me that moment was coming. Soon. The invitation came again. This time, not an email. It was a letter. Folded neatly, tucked into an envelope with my full name written in my mother's perfect cursive. No return address, just a note on creamy cardstock. We're gathering this Sunday. Rachel's hosting. It would mean a lot if you came. We want to start fresh. Daniel will be there. Start fresh. As if the past was wallpaper. Something you could just peel off, reapply, repaint over. I almost threw it away. But something in me paused. Not out of longing, not out of guilt, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to say out loud what I'd only ever whispered. The morning of the gathering, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I wore soft linen, warm neutral tones, hair down, no makeup, just balm on my lips and light in my eyes. Not armor, not camouflage, just me. I looked older, stronger, not harder, just clear. Mason watched from the hallway. Ellie curled around his leg like a vine. "You don't have to go," he said gently. I nodded. "I know. That's why I can." He didn't ask questions. He just kissed my forehead and said, "Come back whole." Rachel's house hadn't changed. Same hydrangeas in perfect rows. Same overpriced wind chimes clinking like nervous laughter. There were more cars than usual. A full-blown gathering. Like they were celebrating something. Maybe themselves. I parked 2 blocks away. Walked in the sunlight, calm and steady. Each step a reminder that this time, I was not arriving as a guest. I was arriving as a mirror. I stepped into the backyard. Voices, glasses clinking. That familiar artificial cheer. And then silence. Like the wind dropped out of the sky the moment they saw me. Rachel came first. Wide smile, eyes cautious. "Sarah, you came." I nodded. No hug, no handshake. Behind her, I saw them. All of them. My father, older, smaller. My mother, sipping white wine with lipstick on her teeth. Daniel, leaning against the edge of the deck, arms crossed, eyes already rolling. The prodigal daughter had returned. Only this time, she wasn't here to beg. No one knew what to say. The silence stretched long and sharp. I broke it with 4 words. "Where is my chair?" Rachel blinked. "Of course, right here." She gestured toward a long table set for brunch, a spot tucked on the edge, near the kids. I looked at it, then back at her. Not that one. I took the chair at the center, the one Daniel was leaning beside. He stepped back slowly. His smirk cracked. Just slightly. And I sat. My presence spoke louder than any raised voice ever could. The conversation started again. Awkward, hesitant, everyone too polite, too loud, performing normal. I waited. Let them dance. Let them believe I was there to play the game. Until dessert came out, lemon tart, our mother's favorite. And Rachel raised a glass. To family, to forgiveness, to moving on. I stood. No glass, no toast, and all eyes turned. Daniel rolled his eyes. "Here we go," he muttered. But I didn't look at him. I looked at my mother. "Do you remember the time I broke the vase in the hallway?" She blinked. "Sarah, that was, what, 30 years ago? You said I was reckless, called me ungrateful, sent me to bed without dinner. I paused. Except, it wasn't me, it was Daniel. Silence. She stared, speechless. He told me later, years later, that he'd done it. But you never asked, never checked. You just assumed it was me. My father shifted uncomfortably. Rachel looked down. I turned to Daniel. Do you remember? He shrugged. It was a long time ago. No, it wasn't. Not to me. I stepped forward. Because that moment taught me something. That the truth doesn't matter in this family. That appearances do. That I could bleed. And you'd ask if I got it on the carpet. Daniel laughed under his breath. You're still so dramatic. That's when I turned fully to him. Face to face. Same height now. Same eye level. But I wasn't the little sister anymore. You know what the difference is between us? I said softly. He didn't answer. I spent my whole life trying to prove I deserved love. You spent yours proving no one else did. The air dropped. Even the wind stopped. No shouting, no chaos, just stillness. And Daniel, the one who always had the final word, had nothing. Because somewhere deep down, he knew I was right. And worse, he saw what he could have been. If he had chosen softness, if he had chosen healing, if he had chosen to look inward instead of punching out. He saw a reflection of a life he didn't have the courage to build. And that was the shattering, not my words, but the mirror of them. I turned back to the table. My mother had gone pale. My father refused to meet my eyes. Rachel looked like she wanted to cry, or disappear. But I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. I didn't come here to fight. I came to return what never belonged to me. They looked confused. Your guilt? I said it simply, like setting something down at someone's feet. I've carried it long enough, all of it. The silence, the shame, the blame, the need to be enough. I looked around. You don't get to own me anymore. You don't get to narrate my story like I'm a side character in yours. Then I smiled. A real one. I forgive you. Not for you, for me. Because I won't carry your sickness into my daughter's life. And just like that, I was done. Not Mick drop done. Not storm out done. Peacefully done. I walked away from the table, from the wine glasses, from the eggs gone cold, and the air thick with unspoken truths, and no one followed. Not one of them. I reached the car. Mason was waiting, arms crossed, heart wide open. Ellie was drawing in the back seat. When she saw me, she beamed. Mama, you did it. I opened the door, looked at her. What do you mean? She shrugged. You went in? You didn't cry. You came back. And it hit me. She was watching the whole time, not just today, but always. How I spoke, how I stood, how I healed. And this was her blueprint. So I buckled in, rolled down the window, let the wind wash over me like holy water, and whispered to myself, You did it, Sarah. You came back. A few weeks after the confrontation, I sat on the balcony just before dawn. The sky was turning that shade of lavender that only exists between darkness and light. Las Vegas in the early morning is strange, still glittering in the distance, but soft, almost bashful. The noise hadn't started yet. For once, the city felt like it was exhaling too. I held a mug of coffee, warm between my palms, and watched the world wake up. And I realized I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. Not an apology, not closure. Not a version of the past where they turned around and said, We see you now. I had stopped carrying them, and I didn't even notice when I set them down. Ellie came out, rubbing her eyes, her curls a mess of sleep and dreams. Mama, she whispered, curling up beside me. Did the sun come back yet? I pointed to the horizon. Almost. We sat there in silence, wrapped in a shared stillness. It felt like home, not a place, but a rhythm. A quiet where no one needed to be anything other than what they already were. She reached for my hand, and I thought, This is the family I built. One morning, I found a crumpled notebook in the back of my closet, the one I used to write in during the dark days. Letters I never sent, words I had once needed to say but no longer did. I read a few pages. A letter to Daniel, full of rage. A letter to my mother, begging her to explain herself. One to Rachel, asking her to choose me, just once. And then, one to Ellie. It was dated a year ago. I'd written it after she asked me why people who love you can still hurt you. It said, "If I do nothing else in this life, I want you to grow up knowing love without fear. I want you to know that being sensitive is not a flaw, that your voice matters, even when it shakes. Especially when it shakes." I folded it back into the notebook and tucked it away. Not because I needed it anymore, but because I wanted to remember the woman who wrote it. She saved us both. Mason and I grew quietly, like vines under soft light. No grand declarations, no urgent need to fix each other. Just long conversations, shared meals, the comfort of his laugh in our living room. Ellie adored him, not because he tried to be her dad, but because he saw her, the same way he saw me. One evening, he brought home a little wind chime from a market, wooden, handmade, imperfect. He hung it by the kitchen window and said, "For balance." It clicked against the glass in the breeze, soft, steady, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself dream again, not of revenge, not of proving anyone wrong, just of weekends in the garden, of Ellie's laughter echoing off the walls, of love that didn't ask me to shrink. I got a call from Rachel in the fall. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, voice trembling, unsure. "I think you were right. About everything." I saved it. Didn't reply, didn't need to. Some stories don't end with a conversation, some close like a book, gently, firmly, with a whisper instead of a bang. And that's okay. I started teaching voiceover classes once a month. Online at first. Then, in person, women would show up with shaky voices, unsure of their stories. And I'd remind them, you don't need permission to speak. You never did. Sometimes I'd look at their faces, their hesitation, and see myself 10 years ago. Scared. Small. Wanting to be loved more than I wanted to be whole. But now I speak from a different place. Not louder. Just rooted. Ellie's 7th birthday came and went with glitter cupcakes and a water balloon war in the backyard. Mason grilled hot dogs. The neighbors came by. And when she blew out her candles, she closed her eyes for a long time. Later that night, I asked her what she wished for. She said, that Mama doesn't have any more bad dreams. I hugged her close, my throat tight, and I told her the truth. Me too. But guess what? I haven't had one in a while. Because it was true. The ghosts had gotten quieter. Still there sometimes, but no longer in control. People ask me now, do you regret cutting them off? And I say, I didn't cut them off. I just stopped bleeding for them. I made peace with what happened. Not by excusing it, but by refusing to carry it. I reclaimed my story, not to make them villains, but to make myself the author again. And that's the greatest freedom I've ever known. Some nights, I still hear Ellie singing to herself as she falls asleep. It reminds me of when I used to hum to keep myself calm in that old house. Back then, my voice was a shield. Now, it's a bridge. A soft echo from the woman I was to the woman I chose to become. This morning, she asked if we could plant a tree in the front yard. She wants to name it Hope. I said yes, of course, because that's what this is now. Not an ending, but a planting. Roots, light, a place where the past can rest without poisoning the soil. And as we pressed our hands into the dirt together, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "We're home now."